Hey there, welcome to episode 78 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 12:15 in the afternoon on Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. Today's episode, initiative, as in taking the. Hopefully you'll find this interesting. If you are new to the FFS Talk audio program, this is basically an audio essay for the moment, broaching various topics that we can explore to discuss, or for me to suggest what works, what does not, and what we might do about it into the future. Perhaps various episodes in the past, maybe 78 of them, including this one, will offer some seeds of discussion. Maybe you have an opinion on what works, what doesn't, and what we might do about it, or some combination of those in the future again someday. Guest or guests to join in the conversation. There are certainly many starting points. If you are not familiar with what FFS Talk or what FFS means, it's an abbreviation for an Irish expression. If you don't know what it means still, you need to meet more Irish people. You can hear my voice is still fighting with me a little bit. It is allergy season here in the Greater Vegas area. I will work through it, if you will. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, a summary that I will read to you, and the episode links, 4 of them, the typical shameless self-promotion, which, yes, I believe they do need to be consolidated a bit, and 1 article about the importance of taking the initiative. It's just one. There are many. You can find similar things on the internet out and about, just for reference. So let's begin so we can end the summary. You know this person, the one who always seems to be involved, to step up, to be the bridge between plan and action. The person who takes the initiative. If you do not know this person, hopefully you are this person. The links, the usual buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo links, including the Buy Me an Update 5-minute microcast published on Mondays at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. You're under no obligation to spend any money at this or the other Ko-fi.com site. I use them for outreach to my millions and millions of listeners and fans. The posts link is also available on the profile page, which is essentially a free-form link tree. There are links to all of my audio programs, links to various GitHub organizations, which is where my projects may be found, affiliate links to my favorite coffee beans, a few other things, a little bio information at the top, and then a link to the posts. Buy Me an Update is 5 minutes or less of a quick rundown of the previous week's audio program episodes and any news and announcements upcoming. You can check that out whenever you like. The other pair, Ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com. The hyphen or dash is the key next to the 0 on your keyboard. Ko-fi.com/DanHugo. And then the Coffee Solo, Ko-fi.com/DanHugo/posts, is a unscheduled, just whenever, untopic constrained, about whatever audio program posted exclusively or published and hosted by Ko-fi.com. Similarly, not expected or no obligation to spend any money. Any monies that you do care to spend on either of these platforms will go towards coffee, which powers all of my efforts. The importance of taking the initiative, just 1 article of many, as I said. This one is on Skill Finder Group, the importance of taking the initiative and being proactive. We'll kind of assume that you're going to be proactive if you're taking the initiative, but I will talk about, the 9s can also be proactive. And in fact, hopefully they are. Don't worry, I'll get to it. So let's get started for real. The 1, I'm not saying there's only one, but usually there will be one person in a group who drives things, raises their hand first, and so on. It might even be the person who organized the meeting during which you encounter them. It may be more than one person in a larger group, and surely there is more than one at neighborhood and definitely at town or city scale, but it doesn't sound as cool to be the group. So, the 1. And if you're a Matrix fan, well, hey, you can be Neo if you want. Why does this person do this? That's a great question. Why do they tend to be the 1? There are likely multiple answers for each person. For myself, I often find that if there is something interesting that needs a driver, somebody to get behind it, somebody to do the initial getting it up and running, getting the ball rolling, I look at the possible outcomes and whether they might be generally useful in a long tail sort of way. Maybe useful to me, but generally It might be useful to everybody, myself included. So community elevation is a term I use frequently. So I'll get something out of it, but then so will everybody else. So it's kind of well, nobody else is going to do it, but it really needs to get done. Sometimes it's about the greater good. Sometimes it's about a related personal effort that might benefit. Probably other reasons. It all depends. Like maybe if I'm working on something, but there's a roadblock of some sort, something in the way. Like, I know it will be useful if this gets solved for me, probably for others as well. So I will take this on. And hopefully others will realize, oh, yeah, if we solve this, we can all benefit in some more direct way. So sometimes it's a little bit more vague, and sometimes there's a specific reason. It's not completely self-serving. That's for me. It could vary for anybody, you and anybody else. I've seen some people do things now to raise their stature, and then they pursue elected office, start a new business, or take some other action where the light shining on them already is a benefit. Is this all planned? Is it some part of an evil plot? Maybe, but probably not. More likely, it is the tendency to take the initiative that makes this person the one, and also leads this person to do the other things. Maybe that one takes the initiative as part of the overall plan to gain that attention, to drive participation in something else they are pursuing with particular self-interest. That is something you would want to investigate, perhaps. I can't see it being the main driver. So again, I think if you tend to be the one who takes the initiative, you're also going to tend to be the one who will run for public office or do some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor. You're going to put yourself out there in more than one way. If they happen to benefit each other, then that's not an awful thing. Sort of a weird form of ROI, return on investment. It may not be planned, but if it's not totally awful. In fact, it's probably not awful if that is the case. But if somebody has ulterior motives, which I'll get to, maybe that's something to raise an eyebrow. Grassroots. Usually when there is an initiative to be taken, it is some grassroots effort that is under-resourced, underrepresented in some way, whether people who are taking an interest, but the people who will benefit are in another group of people, however you want to group people in general. So the beneficiaries might be underrepresented, and generally fueled by people on the ground. They're people with a real interest, and that they know each other, or they know firsthand what the deal is, or maybe secondhand. So they're on the ground, so to speak. We could also say these are bootstrapped efforts, or maybe like kicking off a startup, but with some focus other than pursuing a specific business plan or venture funding. Although it turns out those are maybe not horrible ideas as far as approach to organizing and driving a grassroots effort. On the other hand, maybe taking the initiative should be looked at as kicking off a startup, literally. So rather than being maybe it is kicking off a startup. Take the challenge, take on the responsibility to drive some effort, and pursue it as one might an actual startup. Who are the co-founders? What is the goal? What is the equivalent of a business plan? A strategy? Do we need? Otherwise, you might find you're wasting your time, right? So having a plan might encourage others to join in. Like, oh, I see my time will not be wasted. Do we need marketing to get our message out? Do we need to interact with the local government or potential sponsors or supporters? Do we need to get anything in writing? Do we need legal representation? Do we need to file taxes? All the business. So it is, depending on what you're doing, of course, but there can be some similarities, some profound similarities to actually starting a business with none of the upsides. Well, that's TBD. Will being this organized help the cause? Maybe. In some cases, this attention to detail and planning will lead to some credibility to the effort, will lend some credibility to the effort. The people who are supportive initially may find this to be an encouraging aspect and a more reason to contribute, whether it's their own volunteer resources, their time, maybe some financial, contributing to those up front if they know that there is a plan. Or it may be overkill, be seen as taking too seriously this endeavor. I don't know if that's always, or I don't know how often that would happen. No, you're handling this too professionally, but I'm sure it does happen. I'm going to suggest that it would happen because someone else, someone who's not taking the initiative might look at this and say, oh, this is going to be real work. this is a real thing. I thought this was just going to be a kind of a fun, hey, we should try to, I don't know if that person would be helpful, but that could be one perception. I'm just guessing. This latter scenario seems unrealistic, as I've intimated, but while it is rare, it is a real possibility. And, maybe ask. Communication is key here. I usually refer to the 1990. Any group of people, whether we call it a community, a city, a special interest group, or a classroom, a random gathering, something else, needs some sort of a go-getter, some type of person who is that. At least one, more is better. The taking the initiative person. This is a human nature. Most people are going to be a little skittish about jumping into the unknown. This is just the way it is. I often label this as the 1990 breakdown, where the smallest group, it might be 1% actually, but it is the smallest subset of a population, the ones, is made up of the go-getters, the doers, the pursuers of the long tail, people who will step up and take the initiative, people with a tendency to be leaders or to have leadership qualities. The second group, still small, and again, maybe 9%, but that can vary. So, roughly speaking, much larger than the ones, maybe 9%, definitely much larger than the 90s, which we'll get to in a moment. The nines are important, even critical, but these are often people who have other obligations, are new to all of this. Maybe they're nascent ones gaining experience. There is nothing wrong with being a 9. There's nothing wrong with being in the 9s group. And in fact, that may not always be the case. Maybe you're a 9 today, but tomorrow in a different context with a different group of people working on something else, some other idea, you're the 1. The 90s, though, this is the vast majority, the spectators who are watching to see what unfolds. I usually suggest that the 90s are waiting for someone else to take the initiative and actually address the problem, leaving it to the ones and the 9s, and then kind of sitting back. Sometimes they'll even chide failure. I don't know. That's a psychology thing that we won't get into. Note that one person could be in the ones in some scenarios and the 9s in others, and might be hanging back watching all of this in yet another situation or situations. However, I believe the personality of a 1, a 9, or a 90 will be apparent in any of the situations where this can be observed. So a 90, a spectator, will still have the go-getter, the doer, the leader, the initiator personality. They'll probably, if they're in the 90 group, they'll probably really float up to the 9, if that makes sense. I found this to be true, though. You may too. You may not use 1990. Maybe you're viewing it as like the 80-20 rule. Maybe you've got your own labels, but they're not hard and fast. It's just a general tendency. You have to realize that not everyone's going to jump up and raise their hand and take the ring, or however you want to visualize that. And not everyone is going to be hanging back and doing nothing or watching. And being a spectator is not awful, but spectators are spectators. That is something to be understood. So what works in all of this? The good news, there are those who are either leaders already or willing to be leaders in scenarios that really need someone to take the initiative. Once someone in a small group is taking those reins to drive some effort, there are plenty of tools out there, free or very reasonably priced, to enable things like organizing individuals and groups for gatherings and other activities, getting the word out through various old school social media and more modern decentralized platforms, free hosting for some services, and in general, open source often fills in most early needs where tech tools are needed. So I guess we could summarize that by saying there are a lot of tools hanging around if you have the wherewithal and probably more time to dedicate to this internal infrastructure that you need to enable your external efforts. Will you, the 1, be responsible? Will the 9s take this on? Hopefully the 9s will be there for you. Goodwill of those nearby comes in handy. If the 1s and the 9s can curry favor from others based on their established reputations, previous accomplishments, and maybe a good story to tell, whatever the effort might be, might move along a bit more easily, more quickly, maybe more cheaply, if there are others who lean in. In some localities, even the 90s will take notice and get the word out. This could be retweeting, sharing, liking, all the other social media tropes now. These might be people in local media who might be able to provide some traditional news coverage. That would be nice. Maybe some of the modern day influencers will give a shout to their audiences about what you're trying to accomplish. There are podcasters and YouTubers and the like who can do some of the same. And the magic of virality, the magic of virility helps. The magic of virality might make that effort more and more interesting to more and more people if the crank begins to turn and more people take notice. Even though spectators can be helpful if they just do that simple like or equivalent. Just a quick mention to a friend in person, online. We all have these features in our modern day, so there's nothing really outlandish about these. It could be helpful to the cause. Imagine 5, 20, 50 years ago, getting the word out was not nearly so easy. So we have the pieces around us to enable these things. We just have to put them to use. So you, again, probably need more time, more wherewithal. What does not work, however? Obviously, the one taking the initiative may have ulterior motives, as I suggested earlier. Those participating, some of the 9s may have ulterior motives as well. Not all, or maybe all. This can be a real problem if the motives are not connected to a pattern or if outcomes are ultimately self-serving. That is, who expected this if it just comes out of nowhere? If someone does a lot of activities where they are frequently self-serving in their outreach, then that's a pattern, right? So if you can spot the pattern, you can go into it, so to speak, with that understanding. But if it kind of surprises everyone, that's a different thing. In other words, it could be all a ruse, or maybe some of it, to benefit a few. It could be a scam or a con. That's a little bit more intricate. But it could just be, if we put on a good face and we try to do something good for everybody, there really might be more benefit for a few people, or there may be specific reasons to try to elevate or promote certain things to achieve some other benefits. So that's getting a little complicated, but generally speaking, people either do it for their own reasons to help, or they do it for their own reasons to benefit. Hopefully more of the former. It is not common, I hope, but it's something to be aware of, something to look into, even at the risk of spoiling the good feelings. Knowing sooner rather than later will ultimately be worthwhile. So in other words, you should be able to answer a question like, why are you doing this, with a specific answer, something specific that is not self-serving, something that will prove to be true, honest. Those are generally good things that encourage participation from the 9s or other 9s if you're a 9 yourself. External misunderstandings, or worse, might be, like contempt or worse, might derail an otherwise positive effort. There may be personal beef, a competing effort of some kind, like, we have to succeed instead of them, so we'll do whatever comes to mind, or a general misunderstanding that leads to proactive antipathy, like your 90s or even the other people who don't know what you're doing might have a complete misconception for whatever reason, whether placed on purpose or just lack of communication, and they may derail efforts. I myself have found this to be true from forming an owners association. Some drastic misinterpretation and lack of understanding led to the spreading of very incorrect information. Then you got to spend your time dealing with that. It can taint the views of the larger population, which is it didn't happen at scale. It happened more within the potential members of this organization I was putting together. And it can turn goodwill against the effort. This is often tragic, and energy must be spent countering this antipathy instead of focusing on the cause at hand. You're spending time putting out fires rather than building a building, so to speak. This is a real thing. It does happen. As I suggested, it happened to me. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. Rather than antipathy, plain old apathy is the typical momentum killer. And that one you can find everywhere. I don't care to tell you where, but you know what I mean. Maybe local media, influencers and others will have an audience, and they will provide some juice to the effort so that more people will be aware, which will lead to more people becoming supporters or even participants. But sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, this simply doesn't happen. Why? This may be a regional culture issue, maybe a structural issue about how local events and activities get attention. It may be too much distraction. It is difficult to make a generalization here, but if we were to make an attempt, we could call it an activation curve. Like I'm saying that there's a lot of possibility, but if we just say, okay, maybe there's an activation curve, You have to get up that curve like a hill. You have to get up it and over it to reach some point where your population will say, oh, what is this? Hey, I'm interested. What? Tell me more. Getting up the curve over the hill is always work. Real world enzymes like influencers and local media reach, can help reduce the curve, but maybe they won't show up. Maybe they are apathetic, or maybe they will require more convincing. In which case, let me fix this typo real quick. In which case, not cast, in which case the curve is there. A Sisyphean task left to deal with on your own. So it would be lovely if more people in places of, I'm not going to say authority, but places of audience, your local news, your local mainstream media news outlets, newspaper, television news, radio, online equivalents of these, but the places where your local populace tends to look for news, if they would give a shout, give a mention, provide a little bit of coverage now and then. Column inches don't cost quite as much as they used to. So some way to help get the word out. Same with your Instagrammers, your TikTokers, and your YouTubers and all this. If they have an audience and they can help get the word out, that would be great. It's a combination of apathy or perhaps some what's in it for me, maybe. Can't say exactly. But what doesn't work is when you have to fight to try to get the word out instead of trying to put your energy into accomplishing what you have to get the word out about. So what is it? Apathy, antipathy, and what was the first one there? Oh, ulterior motives. So some transparency is important. So what next? What could make this easier, work more easily, work more often? Well, obviously any issues encountered would be tackled by the go-getters, right? Clearly, if you're willing to take on some challenge, you're willing to deal with all the sub-challenges. Why would you want to spend your time accomplishing something when you can spend your time trying to accomplish something? Fighting fires. Taking the initiative to overcome adversity, the difficulties blocking progress of the grassroots effort are probably par for the course. A great opportunity to bring the ones and the nines together to perhaps build team. All right, everybody, we need to deal with this public apathy, some rumor spreading on false information, some accusations and finger pointing, some general misunderstanding. Sounds horrible. Knowing that there's a possibility, actually more of a moral imperative is essential. So step one is communication amongst the motivated. Hey, everybody, we're trying to do something really good here. We got to make sure that people know that. And we have to try to stem any misconceptions, misinformation, disinformation. I hate to make it sound like it's a military or a psychological operation, but sometimes it is. And that's kind of like what marketing is anyway, right? Getting the word out so you have control of your story, of your narrative, will probably be helpful so that you spend more time accomplishing, again, than trying to accomplish, spending less time dealing with distraction. There are too many tools available to discount the DIY, do-it-yourself approach to communicating the message on top of all the other benefits I mentioned up above in the what works section. There are so many tools available to help organize and whatnot, but also getting the word out, communicating the reason for the cause, progress along the effort timeline so that people can actually see what you're doing and how it's coming along and so on. Waiting for others to provide news coverage or social media engagement sort of goes against the whole notion. That is, we're taking this on from the ground up. If others notice, great, and we'll try to make that happen. But at the end of the day, there's a reason someone else is not doing it, but we are. Once the aha moment in this regard is reached, making self-driven messaging a priority will address, before the aha moment is reached, making the self-driven messaging a priority will address some of this. Apathy is a strong word in this case, but lack of attention, perhaps. You kind of have to catch a little bit of sunlight on you, maybe, to get noticed. And then I have found that once you have one or two people in a position to, reach an audience, local media, influencers, etc., one or two will help to get the third and the fourth, and then the 10th and the 11th, and so on. Ideally, momentum will spill over, and others in the media and social influencer spaces will also reach the aha moment. Once you get one aha moment, again, a little bit easier to get the second, third, and so on. But we cannot always count on this to happen in a timely manner. So DIY, FTW, do it yourself for the win. And then as you get noticed, it's a chicken and egg problem. either someone will say, this is it. Maybe someone in your 90 group, or maybe even somebody in the nines will say, oh, I can help get the word out because I have audience position with local media. I have a byline somewhere, whatever the case. So that's all variable. But at the end of the day, you're going to almost certainly have to be responsible for your own messaging. And again, luckily we have plenty of tools and avenues to get there. It's all part of the fun. Finally, and perhaps most important from an outreach standpoint, find the other ones out there. Find other ones and nines pursuing some effort, some similar groups of like-minded, motivated people. Maybe there is some overlap or synergy, if you like, so that joining forces might make sense to some degree, maybe in cross-promotion and whatnot. But also the camaraderie, knowing that others are facing similar challenges, trying to accomplish something up that hill. It might offer some specific ideas, particularly useful avenues and shortcuts around or through some of those steep hills, and opportunities to cross-promote for mutual beneficial outreach until the larger population can reach that aha moment for themselves. I've found that doing is better than describing. Show, don't tell is a common phrase. So to get that first aha or lean in moment from an otherwise disinterested or just generally unaware population, you can go and describe what you want to accomplish, or you take a core group of people and you take the initiative to accomplish something interesting enough so that you can hold it up and have the audience say, ooh, does anyone want to be supportive of this? Is this useful? Would you like to see more of this? It could be anything. It could take many forms. As you may know, I'm the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We have a profoundly steep hill. Vegas is not a city known for its culture of innovation. People aren't generally looking for it. If it happens, maybe there's a surprise. There are certainly those who are pursuing innovation, entrepreneurial, innovative ecosystem. It exists, which is good. But getting the word out here is profoundly difficult, which is part of the challenge of getting attention or providing reason for people to become supportive. Like, oh, that looks interesting. I would like to get in on that or get behind that or tell everybody about that. There is a little bit of a curve there to get over. And there's not always help. That is, there's not always that cross promotion. There's not always that commiserate understanding, that camaraderie. Oh, yes, we are facing a similar challenge. Maybe we should join forces, at least in telling people. As it happens, that's one of the things we're working on. The My Muni basically tackles that. Information awareness in a locality. My Muni, my community, my municipality. Getting the word out. Something other than a WordPress website or an inverted pyramid news article. So that requires taking the initiative to help get the word out about taking the initiative. Kind of a meta, perhaps. But anyway, I'm kind of seeing this, not zero, possibly recent jolts to the status quo have made some people a little bit more cautious. But this is years in the making. Maybe a little bit of a detachment or a little bit of doubt. Why would I want to spend my time on this? What's in it for me? Am I going to waste my time, etc.? So I think there's an adoption problem or maybe a curiosity problem. That sounds like trouble. I'm not even going to look into it. No, that's not good. Some good ideas might not get the attention they really deserve because people don't take the time to ask questions or learn more. So these are all challenges. This is all maybe part of the what doesn't work component of taking the initiative, but taking the initiative is important, even critical nonetheless. People who take the initiative can tend to make change happen. No, I will not be referring to the fictitious Gandhi quote, but you can actually be a part of changing things, hopefully for the better. Some people will try to do that for their own self-interest. Again, it won't immediately be apparent. Other people do it just because. I know one of my favorite motivations, which is true, I'd like to see if it will work. I'd like to see if this notion that I'm proposing and pursuing will yield some sort of tangible and positive outcomes. Will it actually address, even solve the problem that we set out to? And will I be able to find some of those nines, or can I be a 9 to someone else's 1 to make this stuff happen? And ultimately, It's part of the entrepreneurial bent, I think, is to not sit in the 90s section and wait for someone else to solve a problem. If there's a problem at hand, maybe it's blocking your own progress with your own entrepreneurial endeavor, and you can be a part of getting around it, getting over it, fixing it. But I'm too busy. That's okay. Take some initiative. Try to connect some people. Try to spread the word out. You can be in the 90s. You could be waiting for someone else to solve a problem. But when you're sitting there, you can say, let me make sure that everybody I know also knows about this. So the rules are not hard and fast. Ultimately, it's about appreciating that the time that people are willing and able to put into something to help solve problems, to make things happen, to advance a cause. It's neither easy nor impossible. It's somewhere in the middle. And when people understand that doing things is not free, but it also isn't, it isn't only for the bourgeois. Hopefully more people will take action and participate in taking action, enable those who take action, and be a part of moving forward, not waiting on the sidelines to watch everything go by. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Today is not too long, probably be about 30 minutes, not too bad. Thanks for putting up with my somewhat scratchy voice today. I gotta get back on my sinus thing. I've talked about that previously. I'll probably do a whole episode on that sometime, somewhere. Maybe a coffee solo episode detailing the up and down sides of nasal irrigation. But it generally does help, so I really should be doing it more often. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you check out the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile, you'll find links to my other programming. If you are interested about any of this, you can check out either Let's Innovate for Vegas, about our nonprofit open source development efforts and so on. Or you can check out Cafe Genius Impresarios, where there's more talking about the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of Greater Vegas and beyond, some startup ideas, pursuing particular challenges and so on. This one is solvable. Just have to actually do it. So get those ones. Find yourself some 1s and 9s. Let's do it. Take care. Thank you so much.